Welcome to the scientific edition of the On Fek Circle, presented by JFtC.com and the Jays from the Couch radio podcast. This little mad scientist experiment happens every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on the Jays from the Couch YouTube channel. You can also watch it on the Jays from the Couch Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, you can go to @JaysFromCouch. And I generally shamelessly share it all over the place, so at some point you'll be able to catch the episode if you couldn't catch it live. Lucky for you, though, this is not the only program that Jays from the Couch presents. There is the main podcast, the Jays from the Couch radio podcast, which has been around for, I believe, 262 episodes now. And that's hosted by our founder and senior editor, Sean Doyle. That's on Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on all the other said channels. It gave birth to the On Fek Circle, but don't hold that against Sean. It's not his fault that I'm a lunatic. But what Sean did give birth to, and the podcast gave birth to, is a terrific show on Thursdays, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, sunny side of the dome, with our colleague and my friend Karen Suter, or Sutar. I keep hearing it pronounced both ways, so I'm going to pronounce it both ways so I don't keep embarrassing myself if I've been wrong. But Karen, terrific baseball analysis. She keeps her perspective. She looks at the problem. She thinks of the pros and the cons, is not afraid to say if something's not working or something needs to change, but it keeps everything focused, and it helps you as a Blue Jay fan focus in on what's going on in the field. So that's Thursdays, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm your host, the Feckless Wonder, Steve Fek. Pardon me just a second. Like I said, it is a mad science experiment. I'm not sure that's going to calm me down enough, but for your sake, let's hope so. Another edition of the On Fek Circle, always a unique view of what's going on in Blue Jays world and in Major League Baseball in general. We do have a This Week in Baseball where you may see my head explode, like in that movie Scanners, when we're talking about this new initiative by Major League Baseball, checking pitchers for foreign substances. And I've got some great stuff from Blue Jays history for Blue Jays Way segment at the end of the program. I want to start off with one quick bit of news. Danny Jansen is officially on the 10-day IL. They are calling up Riley Adams. He is slated to make his Major League debut. He'll be wearing number 50 for the Blue Jays. And let's start. Again, I got my little science calculator and pen and pencil. I'm trying to really set the mood. I've got the microscope over my shoulder there. I want to take a scientific approach to some of the things that are happening right now and that you need to factor in, as the season goes on. And the first thing I want to point out to you, and it is a scientific fact, is that Blue Jays aren't really blue. I mean, even you look at our uniforms, even in the wild, they have that really rich combination of like lighter blue and royal blue, and they're beautiful, and wow, what a great emblem and everything. But Blue Jays aren't really blue. It is an optical illusion. It is a trick of Mother Nature over the treat of seeing a Blue Jay, and it's really, really beautiful. It's something called, let me see. I can't even find the actual scientific name for it. I even had it written down and all. But a light scattering, that's what it's called. So now the blue appearance is because of the type of pigment in its feathers. And a Blue Jay's feathers are brown. Okay, I mean, they're basically brown. What happens is the light scattering, it's almost like a prism within that melanin, which is the brown pigment in a Blue Jay's feather. And the prism effect happens, but the feather and the pigment absorbs all of the light except for the blue. Nobody really knows the reason why. Same thing with bluebirds and other kind of things. There's no such thing as a bluebird. Okay, cardinals have red pigment. You don't have the baseball comparison, But the reason I want to talk about the Blue Jays aren't really blue is that our Blue Jays in 2021 aren't really a playoff team. And that should make you blue. Are we a good team? Yes, we are. We have a terrific young core and an exciting, lineup in offense. Yes, we do. There are too many glaring holes, and we have waited too long to fill those holes for the Blue Jays to seriously be considered playoff contenders. Yes, they're technically in the race. I'm sure they're listed among the wild card leaders. I don't look at the wild card standings in May or June. Okay. But I do look at what's happening when you're playing teams that are probably going to make the playoffs. The Astros, the Rays, the Red Sox, this upcoming series with the Chicago White Sox. That's going to tell us a lot more about what this Blue Jay team is really about. Now, you can look at them saying, well, the Braves have struggled. Okay. They're very much like the Yankees. I think the Yankees absolutely aren't making the playoffs. I don't think the Braves can recover either, though if there's a GM out there that can make the type of moves that needs to be made really quickly, it's Alex Anthopoulos. But, the Phillies are going to have to make a decision. And we did well there. But that's National League teams. I'm talking about the American League teams that they need to at least split series with, if not win, in order to be able to qualify for a playoff team. We desperately need a number 2 starter or a 1A starter. For those of you that have tuned in to the On Fek Circle from the beginning, I have been banging that drum like Todd Rundgren, bang on the drum all day. Okay, it needed to happen in the offseason. As marvelous a season as Marcus Semien has had, that $18 million could have been spent better, and I think it would have cured a lot of other ills. And we need a third baseman. Okay, Kevin Biggio will come back from the IL eventually. Yes, he will. He has struggled over there. Maybe it was injury related, but this is his first year playing third base on a regular basis. Santiago Espinal, Joe Panic, wonderful bench bats. Do you want to platoon those guys at third base? I don't know that that's a solution, but really that starting pitcher is absolutely essential. And with each week, every 5 days, when we don't acquire that starting pitcher, that's one start that we could have of an impact starter that would have a ripple effect across the pitching staff. Start to give the bullpen rest. It's being used. Tim Meza is probably the next guy in the IL, not because he has an injury history, but because he's the only left-hander that the Blue Jays have left healthy. So pretty much when they have a meat of the order or a consecutive powerful left-handed bats coming up, Charlie Montoyo has to go to Tim Meza. Eventually, that's going to just wear him down. Okay, the bullpen woes are not because they're bad pitchers, though many of them are not really suited for primary bullpen duty. It's just that they're having to pitch too many innings. So, as great a season as it has been, and I understand wanting to have, it's the Blue Jays, and it's exciting, and this is a year that we're taking another step to the playoffs and all. We're getting distracted by the blue feathers. Okay, the blue coloring of our Blue Jays, even that hideous powder blue uniform when we wear it, that we're getting distracted by that. We're focusing on that, the pretty and the shiny. Vlad Guerrero having an MVP season. Marcus Semien producing, he was player of the month in May. Randall Grichuk proving that he is an everyday major league outfielder. Okay, there's been so many great stories, but most of the great stories have happened on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, Ryu is Ryu. He's our ace. Robbie Ray has been fantastic. Steven Matz has had his moments. Ross Stripling, maybe he's figured it out. But There's too many maybes in that starting rotation. You need to get that second arm. You need to get it now. And the reason why I'm saying that our Blue Jays aren't really blue is because down deep, everybody knows that Ross Atkins is not going to do that. Because he's got a computer printout, or he's got a Wile E. Coyote plan, or whatever you want to call it. He is just not prepared to make that big deal. He did a great job rebuilding this farm system that Anthopoulos had gutted. He had Ben Cherington by his side. He's got a great staff at that point. But at some point, they're just prospects. Until they can produce, they're just prospects. They need to get their impact bats if they're actually going to compete for a playoff spot this year. And based on their performance over the first 2 months of the season against teams that are probably going to make the playoffs. And yes, I include the Red Sox there. The Red Sox very well may damn the Blue Jays playoff spots because they are for real. They are hitters. They're not like the Yankees that depend on home runs, or even the White Sox to a certain degree. They're hitters, very much like the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays have hitters. Yes, there's a lot of power, but they have good hitters. And they have gone out to fill the holes in the rotation, and they're going to acquire a number one starter without having to make a deal, because Chris Sale is going to be back from the IL, if not before the All-Star break, very, very soon after, certainly before the trade deadline. So that's our first science lesson for the day. Oh, this tweak in baseball, again, I know this is a Blue Jay show, and I should make it more Blue Jay centric, but this has me so outraged. And believe me, this is going to affect more than one Blue Jay pitcher when this goes into effect. I mean, I only have suspicions at this point of who may be using Stickum and substances, for their pitches. I have not been able to prove it. I haven't been able to see it during any pitching performance. I would be interested to see if they're going to start checking catchers' chest protectors, because I think that's where a lot of the material is also coming from. But this major league announcement, this edict, that they're going to start cracking down on pitchers using Stickum or other things to help them get a better grip on the baseball, is stupid. STU pit. All right. I'm so tired of hearing about, but we know people want runs. People want offense. And don't even get into the pace of the game thing. So this is just another delay that umpires are going to have in their hands. It's bad enough that video replay drags on way too long on calls, on all calls, really. That's slowing down the game. And now we're going to slow it down even more because they want to prove a point. And you can't say, well, using Stickum, that's a competitive advantage. Well, you know what? So's pine tar for a hitter. You know why hitters started using pine tar? Because they realized that they didn't have to hold the bat so tightly to get real torque and get a nice hard swing. Because you can then relax the grip on the bat, you can actually get more torque and get more pop off of your bat, more exit, the original exit velocity increase, if you will, by having pine tar. And I know at least one of you out there, and my editor and producer, Sean Doyle, thank you for putting this in my mind. One of you out there is saying, or is going to put up a question on the screen here, which by all means, please do during this discussion. You can send in your questions if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or on Twitter live. Well, it's a safety thing too, because look at how many bats go in the stands. Well, they don't go in the stands now because there's netting there. So don't even go hide behind that, oh, but it's a safety thing with pine tar for batters. If pitchers can't use Stickum, hitters cannot use pine tar. Period. End of discussion. You cannot say it's okay for one and not okay for the other. And there's all these MLB physicists and scientists around now that do all these studies, and they will tell you what I just told you. Pine tar allows a batter to get more drive and more pop off their swing than if they did not use pine tar. That's why when batters also choke up, they do tighten their grip because they want more bat control, not necessarily power. They want to actually cut down on their swing and allow them to drive to the opposite field or, not strike out. You put the ball in play, if you will. There's scientific reasons for that. Okay. And then the other thing I want to touch on here, and this article came up today on Yahoo Sports, and it's been shared in a lot of different outlets. It's the use of humidors. And a humidor basically is a cigar box that you store your baseballs in. And then depending on where and what the other atmospheric settings are in the room you put it in, you're either going to make the balls have more humidity around it because they're going to dry, like in high thin air, like in Arizona and Colorado. Technically, the leather natural moisture dries up. And that's why the ball becomes bouncier and will fly out of the stadium. Okay. Putting them in a humidor helps offset that. And there are actually 10 teams that would be using a humidor once Toronto starts playing in Rogers Center, because that is their intention. The Blue Jays have said, yes, at Rogers Center, we're going to put the baseballs in the humidor. So you got Arizona, Houston, Miami, Texas, and Toronto would all be using a humidor in a domed or at least part-time domed environment. Then you have Boston, Colorado, obviously, that was the vanguard for using humidors. Citi Field in New York, St. Louis, where it's humid, like very few places on earth are humid in the summer, and the cool weather city of Seattle. Why are these 10 cities and 10 teams gaining a competitive advantage for their pitchers or their hitters in a lot of ways? And the other 20 aren't made to use humidors. Either everybody use humidors or nobody use humidors. Okay. It makes sense to use humidors because, again, in the high altitude of Arizona and Colorado, and the two LA teams in San Diego would probably fall under this as far as light desert air. They're not really high altitude, the ballparks, but they would probably fall under the same category there. By putting in a humidor, you're adding the humidity, around the ball. So in theory, the ball is not going to be as lively. It's not going to bounce. And it's meant to keep home runs from flying out on every single pitch. In reality, what really happens in Colorado and Arizona, but especially in Colorado, is that the ball, once it's in the air, will travel farther than at this ballpark at sea level. But the exit velocity is going to be reduced off the bat. It won't be hit as hard. Now, the opposite is kind of in effect when you're in a city like Boston or Seattle, St. Louis. The ball, your exit velocity, it's almost like playing wiffle ball. Coming off the bat, it's much higher. But the ball's not going to travel as far, just like playing wiffle ball. Theoretically, it happens in softball too. But that's a whole other different, physics lesson there. But this week in baseball, Rob Manfred, Theo Epstein, Rules Committee, shut up. This checking pitchers for foreign substances is stupid. And the other thing I need to say is don't even compare this to steroids. That is even an even stupider comparison than this whole idea in the first place, because steroids are an injectable, medical, biological performance enhancer. Forget about the side effects in long term that way. You are gaining a synthetic advantage in your muscle mass and your ability to perform and bounce back as a player. Being smart enough to use Stickum or tobacco juice or fly line cleaner. So all of you fly fishermen, if they do enforce this no Stickum thing, you better buy your fly line cleaner quick, because that's the next substance that pitchers are going to use, because it dries pretty much on contact and it is virtually undetectable. Unless you're taking it to a lab, you're not going to find the fly line cleaner. An umpire certainly isn't. They can't find a strike zone, so they're not going to find fly line cleaner on a baseball. So don't compare it to steroids. It is not. And it comes a time you can't keep punishing pitchers for being good. And that's what you're doing in this particular case. It's not easy to use Stickum or a foreign substance on a baseball. It is not. Everybody makes it sound great, and I'm going to partially blame the analytics crowd for this, because if they didn't focus so much on spin rate, you're building in an excuse for hitters and for that are not fundamentally sound at the plate or swinging from the thing, and now they have the launch angle whole deal. That's what's creating the problem with the offense. It's not that pitchers are smarter. They'll figure out something else to do. And it might not be as a safe a thing. If they decide that they want to now increase velocity even more, and depending on the pitcher, that could mean a ball rising, ball breaking just naturally because of that. If one gets away, somebody's going to die. So Major League Baseball, is that what you're looking for? I mean, I get in theory what you're trying to do, but we have enough problems with pace of play. Here in Toronto, we have Rafael Dolis, who in of himself, is adding 15 or 20 minutes to a ballgame. Even if he has to get one out, somehow he will make that one out last 15 or 20 minutes. And not because he's getting hit, it's just because he's Rafael Dolis and just takes an inordinate amount of time. Enough for ranting. I told you that wasn't going to calm me down. I was hoping that potion would calm me down, but I'm not Mr. Fek. I'm Dr. Feckless. Each week, Blue Jays Way takes a look at the culture of being a Blue Jay fan, the Blue Jays themselves. Most of the most popular feedback comes from when I share historical moments and maybe they have a unique type of a deal. There were 4 great ones for this week, and I really couldn't cut it down to 1 or even 2. So I wanted to save time at the end of the show to do all 4. Okay. So the first one is for today. From the inaugural season, 1977, June 8th, Jesse Jefferson came within 1 out of throwing the first shutout in Blue Jays history. Over the course of the game, he outdueled Nolan Ryan of the California Angels. They both had no-hitters. Ryan's got broke up in the 5th. Jesse Jefferson's got broke up in the 6th. Ryan gave up the first run of the game in the bottom of the 8th. Top of the 9th, Jefferson got the first 2 outs. And the infamous Rusty Torres drove in the tying run. And, of course, it being an expansion team and being the 77 Blue Jays ended up wasting that great pitching performance, and they lost in 11 innings, 2-1. But that was on this date. And if you get a chance, Google or look up Jesse Jefferson's like 77, 78, 79 baseball cards. One of the great throws of all time. And somehow he always had his hat just so. It was the perfect 70s moment in baseball cards. So look up Jesse Jefferson's baseball card. Now in 1989, tomorrow, June 9th, the first game played with the roof closed at Sky Dome happened on June 9th, 1989. It was a 2-0 shutout loss to the Detroit Tigers. And there was a lot of discussion when the Sky Dome was first built, and they came up with, with the retractable roof idea and everything, saying that there was going to be too much of a disparity between the roof closed and roof open. George Bell in particular was unhappy. Now, he was unhappy about a lot of things that might have affected his hitting. I mean, great player, but he found reasons to grouse about everything. Kind of like he should be a host of the On Fek Circle, because he finds ways to grouse about things back then. But I would think over the course of the years, I mean, is it more of a hitter's park? Probably. But I don't think it was that big of a deal. But that happened. The first game with the roof closed happened June 9th, 1989. Now, this next one, you need to follow me. Okay, you need to follow along with the thing. On June 10th, which would be Thursday, 2002, the Toronto Giants played their first ever game in Toronto. And you're saying the Toronto Giants? In the fall of 1975, Giants owner Bob Lurie signed an agreement with the City of Toronto and the Sports Exhibition Authority to play games at the newly renovated Exhibition Stadium and move the Giants for the 1976 season from San Francisco to Toronto. So we would not have had the Toronto Blue Jays. It would have been the Toronto Giants. Of course, U.S. being the U.S., court injunction followed court injunction. The move was blocked. It never happened. That quite caught the eye of the expansion committee, and then they realized that since they were already having to get an expansion team for Seattle because of a lawsuit, they would probably get a lawsuit in Toronto if they didn't add Toronto to the expansion list. So we got the Blue Jays. But still, a little part of my heart thinks of them as the Toronto Giants. And in 2002, on June 10th, Barry Bonds brought his steroids-ridden body to Sky Dome for the first time for the Toronto Giants to have played in Toronto. And our final one may be the one that warms your heart the most. On June 11th, 1993, Tony Fernandez returned to Toronto. In a deal with the Mets, the 11-year veteran was traded back, became a truly integral part of that second World Championship team in 1993. All it cost them was Darren Jackson. I don't think there was a Blue Jay fan alive that wasn't deliriously happy when Tony Fernandez came back home. He originally left in the Joe Carter, Roberto Alomar deal. I think McGriff went with him, and I forgot there was other players involved, I believe. But that big deal, I mean, Fernandez was a centerpiece for the Padres. He came back to the Blue Jays from the Mets. And the other thing, it's like a win-win. The player that the Mets wanted, Darren Jackson, was acquired by getting rid of constant malcontent Derek Bell. So it was a win-win. No more Derek Bell to put up with. Darren Jackson came in, had food poisoning almost his entire stay here in Toronto. And then he got traded, and Tony Fernandez came back. Those are the kind of the trades with Pat Gillick that truly mark Blue Jays tradition and the Blue Jays way. So, if any of you know Ross Atkins, and he has yet to file an injunction against me for defamation of character or libel or slander, play up this part of the show for him and let him know that you can make big deals in June. Well, time's almost up for yet another On Fek Circle. Thanks for watching. Please tune in every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on the YouTube channel, on Facebook page, on Twitter, the main podcast, the radio podcast, Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and Sunny Side of the Dome is on Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. As always, thanks for watching. Come back next week. I'll find ways to piss you off then too, but I'll try to be a good boy. Take care.